Socks off. 10 toes down to the ground right now. Right now. Think I finally figured out who I am, what my style, what'll keep my style.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Chef Life. Today we're here with Tom from Big Mouth Gyoza. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. So we've been working with you for about a year or so now. So as we've just been talking about there, you're quite different to some of our standard customers, so you're a bit more event focused, so It's quite interesting to learn a bit more about that and stuff. So
cool.
Do you want to tell everyone listening where you've sort of started off and how you got into this?
Sure. So I grew up, I started early in the hospitality industry. I started working at a golf club when I was 14, which I don't think is legal anymore.
Right, fair dues, cheap labour.
I was earning like £3.42 an hour, working in a golf club kitchen. Doing everything from pot washing to helping with food prep to serving customers. It's kind of, golf club menu, sandwiches, burgers, that kind of stuff. But it was an absolutely fantastic way to kind of get a start in the working world.
Awesome.
I absolutely fell in love with hospitality. Absolutely love food service and everything about it. I just became absolutely infatuated. So I got a really, really early start kind of in the game. After that I worked in hotels a little bit. I worked for Village, the hotel company. Doing everything from weddings to 4-star restaurant service, kind of really, really good pub restaurant food for a hotel. I thought it was kind of good at the time. The menu was really progressive and they were actually serving high quality food in a decent enough hotel, which I thought was really good. Then I went off to university. Studied kind of business management kind of thing in Manchester. While I was there, I worked with Tampopo.
Nice.
Who are absolutely fantastic. I think Asian fusion is probably the right way to describe it, but they're like a competitor of Wagamama. Front of house there. I absolutely fell in love with Asian food. It just really broadened my horizons to what food was and how to use high quality ingredients in the right way on an absolutely massive scale.
Nice.
I worked in the Trafford Centre with them, which is a huge site doing hundreds of covers a day, which is mental. I absolutely loved it. I loved the rush of restaurant service. I just loved everything about it. So for me, I always wanted to have my own food business doing something, but I was never really sure what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do that. At one point, I didn't really think going into the food industry was going to happen for me. I had a lot of different options on the table. But then I started doing a master's while doing something a bit ridiculous. I was trying to make a living playing poker.
Okay, interesting.
With the dream being travel the world on the pro poker tour.
Nice.
Doing all that kind of thing. But in the end, it was a little bit too focused on being behind a computer screen 70 hours a week, and it wasn't really what I wanted from life. So I was in a little bit of a crossroads with what I wanted to do. I had the choice of moving to London, working in finance, doing that kind of thing. But ultimately I chose to move to Asia. Spent about a year traveling around Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, that kind of thing. Settled in Japan, where I stayed for nearly 4 years.
Fantastic.
Teaching English.
Whereabouts in Japan?
I lived between Yokohama and Tokyo.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing experience. Best years of my life, probably. It was so much fun. I was working in junior high school, teaching kids. I was working for Sesame Street, they have an English program there.
Wow.
Basically working with Elmo.
Nice, awesome.
But at the same time too, there was still this lingering feeling in my head that I really wanted to do something with food, because it was the industry I grew up in, the industry I absolutely loved. And it got to the point where teaching English had kind of run its course for me. Living as a foreigner in a country like that, it's very, very difficult to kind of start your own business or have entrepreneurial aspirations without the proper backing from a native speaker and somebody with the right name for the paperwork and all that kind of thing.
And how did you find the language barrier when you went over there? Was that?
They're the most wonderful, helpful people you could possibly imagine. They're absolutely wonderful. So, my Japanese was relatively good by the time I left. But at the same time, too, you muddle your way through, and they're just so wonderful and helpful, and they try hard. And if they see that you're trying, then they give you absolutely as much room as you need to kind of work through the situation. So I kind of got to a point where I was managing teachers as well as teaching.
Wow.
And the next step for me was to basically become what's called a salaryman.
Yeah.
Which is where you're bound to an office for 70 hours a week, not really working with kids anymore, not really kind of doing the thing that I really enjoyed teaching. It was fun. But so you kind of cap yourself with like earnings and like career progression unless you become like an office drone.
Right, okay, yeah.
While I lived in Japan, I really found the food, the restaurant scene, everything about eating and dining in Japan, I just was absolutely enamored by it.
Yeah.
You're really lucky when you're a teacher because you finish school basically when school finishes for the kids. You get to 3 o'clock, and unless you had evening work on, you'd go to a bar, you'd go to a restaurant, and you'd spend your afternoons drinking and eating in the most amazing places. Just so many wonderful memories of just meeting some friends, posting up at a bar, and just a tiny kitchen there, and just bringing whatever they've cooked that day. It was just magical. So I kept nagging myself, thinking, if you're going to stop doing this, what are you going to do next?
Sure.
So the final year that I was there, I spent a lot of time kind of thinking, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And meanwhile, back in England, I think this was 2017, 2018, we were seeing an absolute boom in street food.
Yeah.
So many street food businesses starting, so many amazing venues happening. And I was kind of watching from afar, seeing this develop, thinking, how can I get involved in that? How can I get my piece of the pie? Meanwhile, Japan has absolutely wonderful festivals.
Yeah.
So like through the summer and spring, it's like Matsuri season. It's
Nice.
like every little village has its own little festival.
Yeah.
Or you'd go to some bigger ones for like a big Tanabata festival, like a dance festival.
Yeah.
And there'd be all these stalls lined in the streets. Just families would just set up, and somebody's grandma makes amazing yakitori.
Nice.
And they'd just be selling just chicken on a stick.
Yeah.
You know, they're not doing anything fancy. They've just got a cold griddle in front of them.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I just thought, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
So I kind of spent a whole year like researching, making a business plan. But the big first step, the first issue that I had was I didn't know what I wanted to serve. I didn't know what I wanted to cook. And I tried loads of ideas. I was always having tasting parties at my flat.
Nice.
My friends would be coming over. I was going to do like crazy tempura prawns.
Yeah.
I had an idea called bad salads, which was like doing like salads in a way that was unhealthy.
Nice.
Like loads of different things. So I wanted to have a niche.
Yeah.
Because one of the most inspiring things about food in Japan is you go to a place that just does one thing.
Yeah.
That's all they do. Like my favorite ramen place, a place called Yoshimura in central Yokohama.
Mm-hmm.
They've been cooking in the same pot since like 1954.
Awesome.
Like it's the
My
same
kind of vibe,
pot,
that.
it's the same family.
Yeah.
The recipe's not changed. The bone broth is constantly on the boil. It's
Brilliant.
never taken off the simmer.
Yeah.
I just love the idea of doing one thing.
Yeah.
And doing it really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine pointed out that I eat more gyoza than probably anybody she's ever met in her life. It'd be like if I got some time at lunch, I'd nip to a local spot, grab some dumplings, grab some rice, or I'd cook a load of frozen ones in my kitchen at home, bring them into work, and that'd be my lunch.
Yeah.
So when it was pointed out that that was the case, I realised, oh yeah,
that's your thing.
maybe that's my thing.
Awesome.
And I was really lucky because working with lots of my students, I worked in junior high school and teaching little kids as well. The mums of the kids really, really liked me, and they really liked talking to me about what I was doing. So I got lucky enough that they would show me, they'd take me into their kitchen, and they'd show me how their family makes gyoza.
Nice.
And my teaching assistants did the same, Akiko and Miho. They'd be like, oh, well, we make them this way, and we do this, how about this?
Yeah.
So they basically showed me how to make gyoza. They taught me the things that their families did to make them. Yeah. And I got a really, really great head start. Yeah. That allowed me to then kind of go in with some knowledge to... I basically travelled Japan for a year. Brilliant. Going to as many gyoza restaurants as I could.
Nice. Tough gig, man. Tough gig.
It was a lot of fun. I ate about 120 across the country.
Wow.
So like on my weekend, on my days off, I'd just go, right, there's 3 spots I want to try in this city, take the train, you know, spend a day wandering around, exploring a new place, but then dropping in here, seeing what they did, seeing what they did at another spot. And that was just an incredible way to kind of plan a business, to look at all these different really great examples of a food I really loved, and to see how they do it, and to see what my spin's going to be on it, how I'm going to do it. Yeah. So that's kind of how Big Mouth Gyoza was born.
Awesome.
Spent a year developing a recipe
Yeah.
for a pork belly gyoza.
Nice.
I saw that vegan food doesn't really exist in Japan as a concept.
Yeah.
It's still kind of getting there. But I saw how big vegan stuff was getting in the UK.
Mhm.
So I made a point of making sure I've got an amazing meat product. And we also make a mushroom gyoza
Yeah.
that I developed while I was over there too, which was quite difficult because a menu would say vegetable gyoza, but what they actually meant was it was pork
Right.
and
Got you.
vegetable.
Got you. Yeah.
So finding examples of that was really tough. But yeah, so I spent a year planning this business, came back with 2 amazing recipes for dumplings, a business plan of who to contact, how to get into events, all these things.
Yeah.
Like, did case studies of big street food businesses to see
Mhm.
what they're doing well and how they're doing it, to try and figure out my branding and my
Yeah.
strategy for how to deploy. And then moved back and hit the ground running.
Nice one.
Moved back to England in April 2019.
Yeah.
And my first event was, I think it was the first week of June
Wow.
in that year. So I kind of landed, was able to secure a loan just while I was leaving Japan in England for the finance for the business.
Yeah.
And then rocked on from there, really.
Awesome, brother.
So we had a first year of, but it was brutal, really. My mum and dad moved to the Yorkshire Dales while I was living in Japan.
Right.
And they had a garage and a utility room.
Yeah.
So they very kindly said, look, start it here,
Yeah.
go for it. So they were amazingly supportive and still are to this day. So yeah, literally started out at the back of my mum's kitchen,
Yeah.
filled the garage with freezers,
Nice.
and everything I needed, and went from there.
Awesome.
So I think my first event was just near here, actually. I think it was in Murfield, a little event in a field. So I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Threw a gazebo up, threw some tables in there, had some
Rock
griddles,
on.
some steamers,
Yeah.
and was like, let's see if we can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And now it'll be 5 years in April
Awesome,
since we
brother.
started. It's been
Awesome.
a wild ride since.
Yeah, yeah. Have you found with girls, have you had to educate consumers? Does everyone know what it is
No.
on the term you
And
stand now?
this is still a battle now.
Yeah.
I think there's been some amazing coverage of Japan
Yeah.
in the British media over the last few years with the Olympics, with the rugby going
Mhm.
there. There's been some fantastic shows on TV. There was a Paul Merton one, a Paul Hollywood one.
Paul Hollywood, yeah.
But still, it's a tough one. It's a tough sell.
Yeah.
We're competing. We compete in lots of different markets, but we try to offer something that's really, really high quality. Something
Yeah.
that's handmade, an artisan product.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we're competing next to a burger van.
Yeah.
And people know what a burger is, but
Yeah.
they don't necessarily know what I have.
Yeah.
So that's definitely been a battle.
But then I imagine you probably get the flip side of that, whereas I think some people will probably run to you versus the burger. Like my choice of food would be Japanese.
Yeah.
Anything if I'm at street
Japanese,
food,
yeah.
I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Just because again, to your point, you touched on there. One of the big sells for us is the reason we got into Japanese ingredients was that one company will just make a ponzu.
Yes.
And they nail it, and they've nailed it for 50 years.
It's
and
wonderful.
I love that versus a bad example, but a Unilever who will do a butter, a washing detergent.
Everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that to me is the big appeal. But I think there are people out there like me who are really into that Japanese vibe.
And we've seen that as we've grown. The best example is Download. Download's a big rock festival at Castle Donington.
Yeah.
We're there every year, and we have people who have our food at Download who will come to us somewhere random. We're like, you guys were at Download, weren't you? We're like, yeah. We're like, oh, thank God. I've been thinking about your dumplings for the last year since we had them last.
That's what you want though, man.
You see that a lot, but educationally, it's been quite difficult. I'll give you a really good example. One thing we've done this year is, unfortunately, I think, well, not unfortunately, if you have a couple of drinks in you and you're at a festival or you're at a food festival or something, you probably want some chips.
Fair.
And people gravitate towards something with chips.
Yeah.
As a consequence of that, I've realised I have to serve chips.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at all of the amazing gyoza establishments in Tokyo, I can think of one store that sells gyoza with fries.
Yeah.
Oka the Best Days in Nakameguro. They do amazing handmade gyoza, but they serve them with fries.
Yeah.
So kind of seeing that they did that allowed me to think, well, if somebody's doing this in Japan,
sure,
it's probably okay for me to do it too. So we call it gyoza loaded fries because people love the word loaded.
Yeah.
I think it's a psychological thing.
I hate
myself, it kills me, but
You got to do what you got to do.
Gyoza loaded fries, as we've sold, it's been our biggest seller this year.
Wow.
So we do fries. We make a soy vinaigrette to go on there.
Nice.
Season everything fantastically. It looks amazing, and it just flies out.
Yeah.
And I think going back to your point of educating the customer, I think we're in a cost of living crisis, and people are struggling, but people do still have money to spend on food.
Sure.
It's just, if you're going to spend 12 quid on a meal somewhere,
It's got to be killer.
it's got to be good. You want it to be good, and also it's got to be safe too.
True.
So if you go somewhere and you don't necessarily know what the product is, and it comes with rice, you might be thinking, I'm going to have something that I don't really know what it is, and it comes with rice.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a risk for them.
Yeah.
But actually adding chips to that equation and making them really, really good, and showing them, a beautifully presented demonstration plate with gyoza with fries, I think, that looks interesting, but there's the safety net of the fries on there.
Yeah.
So if I don't necessarily like the gyoza, or it's just not for my palate, then you've got the fries as well. So it kind of increases the likelihood of a customer to go ahead and purchase that, as opposed to just getting burger and chips from next door.
Yeah, agreed.
So we've put a lot of thought into that, and I think we've done that really, really well this year.
It's really interesting hearing from you there versus some of the chefs who work with you. You've approached things in quite an analytical way, which is a really interesting approach towards this. Because again, if you focus on the quality of the product and then you're doing the research behind it, I mean, we work with a number of street food vendors, and I think some over the years have just rolled the dice.
Yeah,
and they're good enough a chef to pull it off. And then some have rolled the dice, and it's been an absolute shit show.
That's the thing with street food is a fascinating world, but you've kind of got to give the customer what they want.
Yeah.
And I'm working in an environment where they don't necessarily know they want gyoza.
Yeah.
Because they might have never heard of it before.
Yeah.
So I've got to present my food in a way that's appealing to them, but allows them to try something new at the same time.
Yeah.
But like we are, like me and George, who's my right hand man, we've spent so long analysing other street food businesses, standing in front of them, looking at what they're doing well, looking at how they're approaching it, and trying to learn any lessons that we can and applying it to us. Like menus, for example, just writing a menu and how you choose to display it. Yeah. I've gone into so much detail on this over the years. It kills me. Yeah. To minutiae with menu writing. And my menus now are so incredibly simple. They're so articulate of what we exactly sell. Yeah. But people still struggle with them. Yeah. And you look at some menus, you're like, I don't understand how you're making sales. It doesn't work. People can't read it, you can't see it, you can't understand it. Yeah. When I'm trying to sell a product that you don't necessarily know what it is, with a menu that is illegible and you can't really understand it, you're screwed.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And the street food thing is, it's when I went to California at Christmas. One of the big draws out, so I like street food, was big street food festival thing. And it's immense, but I tend to go on if there's just a little Mexican family. Yeah. Not a lot going on in terms of the jazz, but the queue's like miles long. And that to me is the thing. Again, it's simple, but that's why the guy it appeals to me. It's like, say, if they've got millions of different things and there's all the jazz, that's the thing.
It doesn't work.
Your money's on marketing, not on the product.
Yeah.
So, no, it is interesting. Street food is very much alive and well in this country. It's doing, I find more of our chefs, if they've been at a place for a long time, they'll gravitate to starting a street food business, and then from there maybe look at a permanent residency or their own restaurant, etc. And I think it's a nice, perceived cheaper way in. Whether it is or not, I don't know. Big question. But then it's critical mass, isn't it? I suppose you go to all the big festivals, so you have to turn, because I imagine they're not cheap to get a pitch out. So it's that's where I think your analytics probably beats.
Yeah, you've got to look. You've really got to consider everything. The money, like people think, this really, really annoys me. People think, you just get a gazebo, you just put it up somewhere, and people
50
come.
quid and you're away.
You're making loads of money. Yeah. You're not. Yeah. It's a killer. A guy this summer, this really, really, really annoyed us. We were at a food festival that I'm not going to name. Yeah. But he came up and I was standing at the back of our pitch, and he said to one of my staff, "How can you justify charging what you're charging for your food when I can get something next door for 8 quid and you're selling for 12 quid? And I had to walk away because I couldn't have the conversation, but luckily Harry, who works for me, handled it really, really well. It's like, look, the cost to be here is immense. Staffing cost is immense. And the risk that you take is massive. Yeah. We don't make money every time we go out. No. People have this crazy assumption that you're making money hand over fist. Yeah. You're not.
Oh, same with our
It's a
business,
really tough world to operate in.
Yeah.
But people think, oh, there's loads of people here, oh, you'll be raking it in.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot that goes into getting it right and making it perfect
Yeah.
to give the customer a great experience and have a viable business at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, it's a slog. I mean, I think because I've been in ingredients one way or another for all my professional life, but I'm also dealing with supermarkets,
Right.
food service. But coming into this, it was a real rude awakening as to, everyone's operating on wafer thin margins, and you've got to make it pop, because there's some other guy out there who'll sell it a penny cheaper, and if I was my customer, I'd be like, well, if I can get it cheap. It's down to service, range, innovation and stuff. It's the perception in the UK of restaurant owners is completely different in reality, in my opinion. Everyone thinks they're loaded, and it's not the case. It's not the case at all. It's tough. It's a tough industry. But then I do think with street food though, what we've seen over, especially post-COVID, is it's leveled up quite a lot. There was a lot of your burger guys, who were chucking a bit of avocado on top of the burger and classing it as high end. But now I think the refinement's really starting to come through in terms of things that you do, and people like Cluck and Dough and things that we work with, where they're really thinking around, how to service a customer better with almost like a rosetted style food option. That some things that you couldn't get at a high quality restaurant necessarily. And I think that's really interesting. But then equally, what I find must be hard from your perspective is you go to a street food place, but all your competitors are lined up next to you. And again, it's that you have to get that buck through the door,
Yeah, I think that's probably a common misconception too as well. When I first started, you're looking in the field and you're looking at your competition.
Sure.
Actually, I consider the people I work alongside as my colleagues, my brothers. We're all in the same boat. In many ways, it's us as one big family, kind of working alongside, and you could say to some extent against the event organisers. I see more comradeship with them than I do the person who books the festival. Because at the end of the day, we're all here for the same reason. And actually, all of our success is intrinsically tied to how well an event company promotes an event, how well it sells tickets, how well that's marketed. Because we all pay an awful lot of money to be there. For me, if I see the guy next to me doing well, I think that's fantastic.
Awesome. No, it's a good way of looking at it.
I want them to do well. I want everyone in the field to have a really, really good show. Because I know how hard it is to be here. I know how much of a slog it is. Because every weekend we trade's a gamble. It's literally you're paying thousands of pounds to be there, and you don't know how well the marketing for the event's gone. And
weather and everything else. It is interesting. I find as well, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but like me and my partner will go and look. The street food thing at an event is like part of the big event for us. Because again, you get that introduction, which is why I touched on that education piece. Like I don't know whether it's because I'm in the industry, but I expect to find something new, and that's where I'm going to put my money. It's not necessarily a burger place or a pizza place, because there's some great pizza street food guys and burgers, but that sort of discovery bit for me is the beauty of the street food event.
It's for me too. I absolutely love that. But so that's kind of why I went into this world with a niche, with something that nobody else is doing. I think I can say with good authority now that I'm the biggest producer of handmade dumplings that sells them at festivals in the UK. We made 200,000 dumplings this year. By hand. We make the pastry, we do everything.
It's brilliant.
It's fantastic that we can do that. But at the same time, if you kind of look at it from an event organizer's perspective, they want something unique, they want something new, but that's actually not their biggest priority. Which I kind of, it took me a couple of years to kind of get my head around this. But actually, they're thinking about three things more than anything. Thinking about quality, they're thinking about giving the customer good food, but more importantly, the food businesses have to be able to operate on the scale that they need them to. It's about reliability more than anything. So the reason you probably see the same food businesses do the big festival circuits, and you might think, oh well, this food isn't great, it's just chicken and chips or just a burger or something, is because these businesses are proven to be reliable. Because the booking agent has booked them because they are reliable. And if they're not, you've almost got like a humanitarian crisis on your hands. You've got 30, 40, 50,000 people in a field who are all hungry with nowhere to eat because let's say you've chosen an artisan business who's been going a couple of years. You know, they might not be able to serve 1,500, 2,000 covers in a day.
Sure.
And then you've got a food business down who's now not serving, who couldn't cope with the demand.
Yeah.
So actually that reliability front is so important for these booking agencies.
And then equally for you to make sure you've got the right stuff at the right time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is really interesting when you break it down like that. It is, because I mean, I suppose what's always interested me since working with you guys is the management, your pre-management almost of things like, 'cause you did Glastonbury, didn't you? And like, that must be, getting ready for that must be mega.
We kind of, I can't really call myself a chef. Like, I'm somebody who's really interested in business and who really, really loves food.
Awesome.
And I cook and I make food for a living. But actually, a big part of my job is logistics.
Yeah.
Like, Glastonbury is just Glastonbury is an example. That's a really, really good example. So we made the dumplings for Glastonbury. Glastonbury's in June. We made the dumplings for Glastonbury in February, March time.
Wow.
We blast freeze them. We've got big walk-in freezers to store everything. And then from there onwards, the week of Glastonbury is a slog. You've got the week before, you're planning all the stock you need, getting your freezer trailer ready, getting everything organised, loading the van, planning all of your resources. And there's months of planning of that kind of thing in the works too for the whole season. But then, so we loaded the van on Friday. We loaded the freezer trailer Saturday night. We then drove to Glastonbury on the Sunday. Yeah. This is before show week. So we're 3 days in now. We arrived Sunday night. Yeah. Set up our tents to sleep in. Yeah. We spent all of Monday building. Yeah. So we built a big 6x6 structure, freezer trailer behind, stock fan behind. Nice. Camping facilities behind. And then we're open from Tuesday. Yeah. So then we decided to open Tuesday. Yeah. We served with a skeleton staff Tuesday. This was our first year, so everyone was like, "Oh, you've got to open." Yeah. Opening Tuesday didn't really work. Right. Okay. So we then didn't open Wednesday because the public was still not in. We were just serving the staff on site. Okay. And then from Thursday through Sunday night, we're open for I think 15 or 16 hours a day. Jeez. Some people go 24 hours. Wow. And then Sunday night it closes. So the whole thing's Friday. It's like you're about 11 days in the works now. Yeah. And then you've got to break it all down Monday, find a hotel to stay somewhere Monday night, and then drive back Tuesday. Jesus. Unload everything Wednesday. You're at like nearly 2 weeks of work. Yeah. Just to service this one event. It's crazy. But then equally a cool experience and just from a brand perspective. Absolutely stunning festival. Just the most amazing facilities. They build a city. They build a city in some fields, and it's just magical. Yeah. In terms, if you could go to any festival once and have the experience of your life, it's Glastonbury. Awesome. It's not like anything else in the UK. Yeah. And with your festival planning, so you just looking at it from your analytical side. Are you looking at, I suppose, do you look at things that are good for the brand, i.e. Glasto, etc.? Do you look at things that are good for educating customers about your brand, which is who's more food, trial festivals, or does that come into any planning? Or I think for the big lesson that we're constantly working on is my food in front of the right audience. Fair. So a good example of that this year would be, well, for a start, I think I should probably explain how it works too first. We don't just click our fingers and get Glastonbury. Okay. You have to apply. Right. So there's no guarantee that I think Glastonbury could be good for my brand and good for my food and put me in a good position, but there's no guarantee that I can get it. Okay. And it's the same with all of the music festivals. Right. The music festivals and food festivals too. There's booking agencies that book all of these things. Right. So there's really big booking agencies that book the music festivals. There's companies that have food festivals all around the country. And so we're in with tons of different booking agencies, and we basically see what events that we could possibly get. Yeah. So the start of my year is me looking at the calendar, filling it up with all the different events that the booking agencies we work with offer. Yeah. And then putting applications in. Okay. So even if we did an event this year, there's no guarantee we'll get it again next year. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So I have to think about the whole summer logistically first and foremost. Yeah. For example. Our biggest month is June. Yeah. There's Download Festival in Glastonbury, but there's also Isle of Wight. Right. Isle of Wight is in the week off between Download and Glastonbury. Yeah. So as much as we get offered Isle of Wight every year, it'd be very difficult for me to do it, having Download being massive, Isle of Wight being massive, and then Glastonbury being massive 3 weeks in a row. Yeah. Logistically, it's really tough. Yeah. So you fill the calendar with lots of options.
Yeah.
You put your applications in. You try and, as application acceptances and rejections come in, you try and think about the calendar, think about what works. We've got that one, we've not got that one, which means we shouldn't do that one. So you pull that application, and it's like a logistical nightmare, basically.
Yeah, sure.
You've got to fill the calendar, make sure you're putting yourself in the most profitable positions for you, and working the best events, and trying to balance how much you're working and the schedule.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about events, for me, I'm trying to get an older crowd.
Yeah.
Download's the best example of that. It's Download primarily is seen as people who like rock music's week in Spain. So they don't want to go to Spain and sit by the pool.
Yeah.
They want to go to a muddy field,
Fair.
watch their favourite bands, and eat lots of food. So the audience at Download is primarily above 30.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's people in their late 20s, early 30s, you're probably young professionals, or they do whatever they do, but that's their holiday. So I think they're there for the whole week. And that's where they choose to have their summer vacation. They spend their money there. Yeah. And it's an older, probably more educated on food crowd. Yeah. Whereas one of the booking agencies we love working with, Book Transmit Festival. Right. Which is in my money, it's Tea in the Park.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Big music festival in Glasgow in Scotland. We did that for the first time this year. And organisationally, the team we worked with were fantastic. Love working with them. Live Nation were really good with us that weekend. But in terms of the crowd, it was a disaster. Right. To summarise it, it was 14-year-old girls wearing no clothes on ketamine. Right. And they're not going to buy artisan gyoza and fries, are they? No. But you look at the lineup. Pulp headlined the Friday. Yeah. I think it was Sam Fender the Saturday. And
so you would think an older audience.
You'd think that crowd draws a bit of an older audience. What was really cool for us was on the Thursday night before, Motley Crue and Def Leppard's tour was tagged on. Yeah. So we got to cater for that show. Awesome. But it wasn't the right crowd. Yeah. So the weekend, as much we had a nice time in Glasgow. Yeah. I can't fault the booking agent for the service they've provided. We love working with them. For us, it was completely the wrong audience. Yeah. And I went in at the end of the festival to the guy who books us and said, "Look, thanks for having us. Obviously, wrong crowd." Yeah. He said, "Yeah, but at the same time, you've taken 100+ food vouchers from the staff. So clearly your food's great, and people who want it, but this was the wrong crowd for you. Yeah. Probably won't do it again." Cool, nice one. So that was a risk, but I got it completely wrong. Yeah. I thought the lineup was based for people over 30 or late 20s, mid 20s, whatever. Yeah. Turned out that was wrong. Yeah. So we took an absolute bath that weekend. I lost so much money. It cost me so much money to be there to produce the show. And it was a nightmare. I suppose at some point you have to roll the dice for all the planning. Everything. Every week's another roll of the dice. Every week's a gamble. Yeah. So we try to plan for events that have the right crowd for us. But then you get it wrong. Yeah. We get it wrong all the time. As much as we get it right, we get it wrong. Yeah. And it's just about having really, really good relationships with the booking agents to know that they can take a risk and put you in these places, put you at these big events. But I suppose the more you do this, the more refined your thinking will get. You'll know that Glasgow was a winner, Tea in the Park, not so much, whatever. To a point, yeah. I don't know how much you know about the world of food festivals. A little bit, not a lot. Food festivals pre-COVID were nuts. Yeah. Absolutely bonkers. People were loving it. Yeah. And then the year that we came out of the COVID, kind of the COVID bubble, because people weren't going overseas, they were spending their money domestically. Yeah. So food festivals were absolutely bonkers. We were doing some serious numbers at food festivals. Yeah. And then this year and last year, terrible. Yeah. Absolutely terrible. And I'm just come off the back of 3 food festivals in the last couple of weeks. They've been dire. Yeah. We've not made money. I think though it's interesting. So I've had this business now nearly 8 years, and we've changed a hell of a lot in terms of customer base and what we do and stuff. But there are certain givens in this business that I could bank. Yeah. My daughter's Christmas on basically. Yeah. And this year, the year that we're in, blow my brains out with that. Everything and my entire faith has been rocked in terms of I could have banked on that every day. Well, the problem that we're finding too, in food festivals, we're our banker, they were our bread and butter. Yeah. But the cost to do the food festivals has gone up, the pitch fees are going up, the fee for electricity is going up on these sites. Then you get in there, and there's now 50% of the people that were there when they were popular.
Yeah,
so your costs have gone up, but the footfall's gone down.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can't. Yeah, it just doesn't work.
It's hard. I think to your point though, from what we've seen from our other street food places, is the music, the actual event, like you say, that's someone's holiday. They're banking $1,000 on tickets to go to V or whatever it is. Yeah. Then I think because you're in holiday mode to a degree, aren't you? So you just lavish with
the thing I was saying last year is we're trying to choose destination events.
Yeah.
Where it's somebody's big money spender for the year.
Yeah.
That's where they want to go. They're going to buy the beers, they're going to buy the food, and they're going to have a great time.
Yeah.
But if your Saturday is going to be, we're going to spend 15 quid on a ticket to a food festival in a field in the middle of nowhere, probably not going to happen, is it? Yeah,
you're more likely to have a wander. It's time killer. And this is what we were talking before the podcast around. I went to Meadowhall a few weekends ago, and it was packed, but I don't know how many people were spending. Yeah. But then it's a free day out with the kids. I'm not saying it's particularly exciting.
Yeah, but it is. Yeah.
It's
wandering around's free. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes I go to a food festival thing in Barnsley now and again. I've been in a few years, but again, I felt there's a lot of people walking around and they'll buy like Leanne's chocolate, and that's it. It's £5.
Yeah.
But are they trying everything? I don't know.
Well, the other annoyance on food festivals, people always want a sample.
Yeah, exactly.
So you cannot, if you're walking through the artisan traders, you could basically eat for the day just having a sample.
Yeah.
And then they're not going to buy the food.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's nightmare for me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially if you don't have an ongoing out, because you did the home stuff, didn't you, where you could buy.
Yeah, we had COVID was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So
I suppose you've only been going a year.
Moved by April 2019. Had my first summer. I did 12 or 15 events. Then I was doing like residency kitchens for 2 and 3 weeks here and there.
Nice.
And then I was at Attic Brewco in Birmingham. I think there was some big rugby thing on, and we're getting this news about this COVID thing.
Yeah.
And I was there, and I think it was late February, early March.
Yeah.
And I just paid loads and loads of money in pitch fees for food festivals for the next year.
Yeah.
Like at the time, I think I probably outlaid about £5,000 at that time, which was huge for me at the time in pitch fees, and still is for a lot of street food businesses. And everything just cancelled overnight, basically.
Yeah.
And I'd spent all of like January, February making loads of dumplings to serve at these events. And I think I had 6,000 dumplings in the freezer with nothing to do. I'd made them all myself.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything was done by me at that time. I didn't have any staff or anything like that. So the only option I had was to try and sell them to people. I'd just be posting on Facebook, trying to deliver them to everywhere. So I'd be driving around in my van, just happy to get the lease payment back on my van, and pay my insurance for the month, and just keep going.
Yeah.
That morphed into I was going nationwide.
Nice.
Working with a courier to sell frozen dumplings around the country, which was really, really great business lesson for me, but at the same time, an epic fail.
Right.
What I didn't realise going into it was home delivery food had skyrocketed through COVID. People were loving it. But I was then competing advertising-wise with Gusto, with HelloFresh and all these massive companies that have just got unlimited resources to throw into advertising.
Yeah, you're dropping the ocean.
So I dropped thousands and thousands of pounds into the advertising world, and it just never came back.
Yeah.
We combined that with big issues with couriers too.
Yeah.
I know you do some frozen food stuff, but sending frozen food through the post around the country
it's tough.
Is a nightmare.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think the final straw was we sent 60 boxes out one day with DPD, and they just never made it to the depot.
Yeah, they're just getting any money back for that.
And then they're in the bin.
Yeah,
you've got no liability, you've got no insurance on them.
Yeah.
Because it's perishable food.
Yeah.
So it's like it turned a profitable week into actually I've lost money and now I've got to ship everything out again at cost.
Yeah.
So we gave up. But we do every year, October, November time, we do a local delivery route.
Nice.
Kind of Yorkshire, Lancashire, Manchester, which is really good. The customers still love it. We've got so many amazing delivery customers still with us from the beginning. And we go into Trinity Kitchen through the winter too in Leeds.
Awesome.
We have frozen gyoza for sale there.
Yeah.
As well as all the food festivals we do, we've always got them for sale.
Yeah.
But from a delivery side, that's just a tough world.
It's a different operation completely.
Yeah.
It's getting that return. So we did the home deliveries like wannabe Asda, and for the first 2 weeks because we were there from the off, it's like holy shit, I'm the Tesco of the North, rock and roll, yeah. And but then it was weird. One Saturday, it all stopped.
Mm.
He's like, we couldn't keep up with demand, and then from that Saturday onwards, it just disappeared. Into it's like all the supermarkets got their act together that weekend. At the same time, everyone realised they weren't going to die or starve to death.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a really rough year, like just club. But then similar to you, so my knee jerk was advertise.
Yeah, pile it in.
Yeah, so we slammed on all the Facebook, Insta advertising. Must have chucked, I'd say, similar amount of money, $5,000 territory, and what a waste.
Oh mate, I got a COVID bounce back loan.
Yeah.
I got 25 grand.
Yeah.
Piled it into ads. All of it gone.
Yeah.
Like
it was just a way.
Thinking, this is how I grow. This is how I compete.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have that loan forever.
Yeah. No, same here. I mean, it's hard though. I think the COVID thing, we made some really good decisions, but then equal really bad decisions.
Yeah.
Like almost on the same day. Some days, like it was very hard to step back and go, is this the right call?
Oh yeah.
You were in a fight for your life.
In it, so it was like you're almost at war.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
To belittle being at war, but like having a small business during the pandemic, it was traumatic.
Yeah.
It was a brutal year. Just trying to keep going and trying to do something.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
Brutal.
It's weird because like there's some days my friends obviously work from home and stuff, and I was like, I'd love to, because we still came in now. I'd love to watch like the Friends back to back, seasons 1 through 9 or whatever. But it was a weird time. But then equally, I think the resolve it gave us. Yeah. Because I felt being in Yorkshire, our COVID journey kind of went, because we had the mini lockdown at Christmas as well after everything came out. So we almost had a year and a half of it, if not longer. And I'd say this year our financial we've just come out of is the first year post-COVID for us, because things have sort of got back a bit more to normal. But it was an interesting time. But then equally, it allowed us to readdress where we were going as a business and exit some customers we didn't want to deal with, in terms of that wasn't our food anymore, and meet people like yourself and other cool street food vendors and restaurants and stuff. And that I am grateful of it in a strange yin and yang way,
Yeah, it's definitely shaped me as a businessman.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And there's also a bit of me, stupid fat boy in me. There's like, I survived that, I'll survive anything. Like,
completely.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I've definitely got more resolve following it. Yeah,
totally. So what's sort of the next step? What's the next couple of years planned for you? What are you thinking?
It's a constantly changing environment for us. At the moment, we're trying to pursue lots of new avenues with making new relationships with residency opportunities.
Cool.
I'm in a really fortunate position now that I've got a great team behind me. Yeah. And for any small business, that's the hardest thing: having the right staff and the right people with you, to be able to trust them to go off and do an event for me without me being there. Yeah. And for me, maybe me do an event at the same time and me send a team somewhere else. Yeah. So the big issue that I face now as having an events food business is our biggest month's the summer. Right. And if you take a couple of hits during the summer, the books don't look too good at the end of summer, and you're now thinking, I've now got to get to next summer when all the money comes back in. Yeah. For example, massive fallout with Kirklees Council this year. Yeah. They cancelled Huddersfield Food and Drink Festival. Yeah. Which I paid an awful lot of money to be at. Yeah. They pulled the plug on it the day it was supposed to happen. And they will not refund the pitch fees of any of the vendors. I've had 230 quid back on a £2,000 pitch. Surely that's illegal. No, it's not. We signed contracts that make it very legal, unfortunately. But for me, that festival was a 15 to 25 grand revenue stream that just disappeared overnight. I got to site and they told me it's cancelled. Yeah. So plus you've had all the prep for that and staff, ready. Yeah. You've every weekend we trade, you've got an opportunity cost battle. Yeah. So we could choose one event, but there's another 10 events that we could do that same weekend. Yeah. I've chosen that event for a reason because I think that's the best one for me. Yeah. But now you can't jump on another event last minute. Yeah. It's impossible. Yeah. So moving forward, we're trying to kind of minimize variance a little bit. Mm-hmm. This year we've had extreme highs and also extreme lows, right? Which has been a really fun ride. Specifically, last year was a little bit steadier. This year's been more super up, super down. Yeah. So I'm kind of looking to next year to try and minimize variance a little bit while still taking these massive shots. Yeah. So last year, well, 2023, we started the year by February and March. We just made about 120,000 dumplings just for 4 weeks straight. No, 8 weeks straight, sorry. Yeah. Without trading. So we didn't bring any money in during that time because we needed the stock for the summer.
Sure.
This year, because I've got a bigger team, I've got more staff, we're trying to take a different approach to that and bring money in February, March, April, whereas last year we didn't so much.
Sure.
To then
flesh it out a little.
We can still make the right amount of stock.
Yeah.
And just do it over a longer period of time to then go into the summer full bore.
Nice.
Like, so I'm trying to explore new opportunities kind of around the country. We're going to Norwich for the first time, which is one hell of a drive.
Okay.
We're doing a month in Reading.
Right.
We're trying to capitalise on times when we're not bringing any money in
to
try and boost the revenue for the business. And then for the summer, you know, as much as we'll have some huge weekends, we can also take the big knocks with a little bit more money behind us and a little bit more, like a little bit even.
Bit cushion, that's the magic bullet though, isn't it? What we've learned in the last couple of years is cushion's key, and that's what we keep trying to work towards. And equally working people like yourselves, because that you can flex our flow of stock in and out, you know, by just these big hits, which are great for us along with our standard trade. And equally allows us to push into new, more exciting areas. But then just touching on staff there, like I've seen your operation, which is awesome. I suppose you've passed quite a lot of skills on to them in terms of the Japanese method and.
Absolutely. For us, it's that I never wanted to be a business that just peddles crap they buy from the shop.
Nice, yeah.
I always wanted to have something that was artisan, handmade, high quality, but could be served at a fast pace and a high volume. So when I learned how to make dumplings in Japan, moving back, I was just the only person making them.
Yeah.
And in some ways it took me a long time to let go of that, but I realised that I had to bring my staff into the making process if I was ever going to grow and if I was ever going to turn this into, like, you know, a real legitimate viable business. So now all of my staff, apart from my newest staff member, can fold a tray of 40 dumplings in somewhere between 3 and 4 minutes.
Awesome.
Which is bonkers fast. They've all been taught how to make them. Right now, as we speak, my girls in the prep kitchen, they're making a big batch of pork mix.
Nice.
Because I think we've got 5,000 pork to fold this week.
Right.
Which is quite a small week now for us. When I consider I was making 500 on my own, and that'd been a massive day for me when I first started. It's been really, really great to kind of show them how to make dumplings, have them working with the fresh pastry. Because we do everything in house. We make the pastry, we make the mix, we fold them, we blast chill them, we store them. And it's been really good. It's a challenge though, because you invest your time in these people. I've been so lucky. I've got an absolutely amazing team behind me, but you don't want to invest time and money in teaching somebody something that's going to take them a year. Like George is the best example of this. George is my cousin. He's worked with me since pretty much the first 6 months of doing this. When he first started working with me full time, he'd just be making the pastry, putting a gyoza skin out, putting the ball on it, and then I'd fold it. He did that for a year. Maybe 18 months. And then at that point, I was like, right, you need to start folding them too. So we spent weeks teaching him how to fold the dumpling. Nice. And then gradually over the last year and a half, he now folds them as fast as I do, if not faster.
Lovely.
And it's the same with Christy, who works for me. Harry's getting there. My mum, unfortunately, is still the slowest folder in the world.
Bless her, she's lovely though, man.
She's wonderful, she's like my kitchen manager. So you've got to pass this on, and the really important lesson I've learned is you've got to empower people. You've got to give them the chance to do it so that I can focus on the other stuff. So if all my time's just me in the weeds, getting through 5,000 dumplings in a week, how do you run the business?
It's difficult, man. I mean, like tomorrow I'm on a van. You know, but it's what I learned coming into this, because I came from big companies before. It took me 2 months, 3 months maybe to realise you've got to be able to do everything.
You've got to do
But
everything,
then equally you've got to be able to show people how to do everything. But then I sometimes enjoy, like tomorrow I'm sort of bizarre looking forward to, because I've been on a van a little while. I get to see everyone. Do you know what I mean, and stuff, and I like the variety having this has brought for me. But I suppose you'll be the same.
But that's what I love about doing this. You know, I grew up with idolising musicians who tour the world, like golfers who tour the world, playing golf, doing that kind of thing. I basically tour the country, selling food.
You go to some killer festivals.
It's great.
Imagine
I get to
meeting
go
cool
see the most
people.
amazing things, meet wonderful people. Like I'm constantly in hotels or camping. I'm barely home. It's great.
I imagine that's quite a good sell to some staff as well. Like they get to sit. I appreciate they're working, but they'll get the vibes from Glassdoor download or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you get to experience it, and it's wonderful. But at the same time too, the great thing about the guys who work for me is they love getting smashed. They love a service that's just nuts.
Nice.
Like when you get absolutely battered from open through close, they live for that stuff. They love it. As much as they enjoy the atmosphere of the festival, everyone who works is a proper grafter. They really get stuck in, and we've had some mental services this year.
That's cool, dude.
Brutal. Slam Dunk Festival was just insane. I don't know if you heard of it. It's a alt rock fest in Leeds at Temple Newsome. But from the moment the gates opened, I think it was just after 12 o'clock until 10:30. You couldn't see a blade of grass in front of us.
Wow.
It was awful, wonderful, and just the most wonderful experience to a point of like everyone's traumatized by the end of the day, but in the best way possible.
That's what you want, man.
Great fun. But we got to at Slam Dunk this year, an old punk band, NoFX, were doing their final shows.
Right.
And they tied one on to the Friday before this festival. Yeah. So me and the lads are stage side, watching a really famous punk band from the 90s play their final ever show in the north of England. Just because we're there.
That's wicked, man.
It's great. You've got the experience of going to these shows, seeing the most amazing things, but also having loads and loads of fun in a mad service. So you get the best of both worlds.
I suppose in a strange way you're travelling and then just put it in, so you're still on that adventure trip, aren't you? Like, you know, it's because I find the cool bit, apart from meeting people like yourself from my job, is my daughter's 8. She's been to 5 Michelin restaurants, kitchens, and met five TV shows. Do you know what I mean? Like, doesn't mean anything to her now, but I'm like, it's cool. That's a cool experience. Do you know what I mean? Like, they know her name and stuff, and I'm like, that you'll appreciate that when you're older. You know, but then that's my little perk, is I get to meet some cool people. I get inspired with food, and you know, I'm saying as opposed to what you might have been before you went to Japan. I'm not a good chef. I'll cook them a bowl of cereal, but I've got some really good inspiration. I'm really into food, and I've got to meet some wicked people.
And as well for me, like I'm so lucky to get to travel the country, but more than anything, I'm lucky to get to take my friends around the country. Yeah, man. And when we do that, we eat at the best pubs, we go to the nicest restaurants, we stay in nice places, we drink great beer, we have a great time while we do it. Yeah. And that's what I always wanted from this. As much as it's work, it's my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going to have fun while I do it. Yeah. Like we do Chester Food and Drink Festival over Easter. Yeah. We stay in an Airbnb with another trader friend of ours. Yeah. And then we do the festival, and we go to some really lovely restaurants, really nice pubs, and we have a great time. Yeah. Like, it's about having a great experience for my guys and for me as much as it is work.
But you'll put that into the job. Like, I found at times sometimes we have to step back. If things get a bit too much, you've got to step back and remember why you're doing it.
Exactly.
You know, and then you'll get back on course. Whereas if it's just all, you may as well go work for you and leave it. You know, if it's all just
you might as well be sat behind a desk. Yeah. Like, not doing anything for yourself.
Exactly. That's awesome, brother. So people can find you Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, Big Mouth Gyoza for everything. We're going to be, if you're Leeds local, we're going to be in Trinity Kitchen, Leeds. Awesome. From November 20th-ish through to mid-January.
Which is where we met.
Where we met you
on
guys,
on our Christmas night out. A bit too much to drink, but
We'll be at food festivals at the start of next year, and hopefully you'll see us again at Glastonbury. Please have us back if you're watching. Yeah. Download Festival, we'll be at Leeds Fest, that kind of thing, yeah.
Awesome. Cheers for your time, brother.
No problem at all.
Love working with you. Cheers, buddy.
Socks off. 10 toes down to the ground right now. Right now? Think I finally figured out who I am, what my style, but I'll keep my soul.